Hi guys, and welcome to the next business tube, and we are continuing with section 1, and today's lesson we are going to be looking at the classification of businesses, basically the different sectors that businesses can fall into. Now, before we start guys, what is an industry, what is a sector? It's just a group of businesses all doing a similar thing, and they fall into 3 sectors that you need to know. Now, the sectors that you need to know for IGCSE are the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector. Now, those sectors, the primary sector is basically the sector that takes the raw materials from the ground. So if your business gets something out of the ground, takes something from the earth, then you are in the primary sector. The secondary sector is manufacturing. So they're actually making a physical product into something. And the tertiary sector is a business that sells stuff, it's a retailer, it's selling things to us as the consumer. For example, business in the primary sector, so taking raw materials from the ground, could be things like farming, fishing, coal mining, oil mining, gas mining, okay? Anything where you're taking stuff, when you're taking raw materials out of the ground, you are in the primary sector. These raw materials then get passed on to the secondary sector. This is what we call the chain of production. So everything goes this direction, from the primary to the secondary to the tertiary sector. So the raw materials get passed from the primary sector to the secondary sector, and they get manufactured. So for example, you get iron or iron metals and these things out of the ground, you get oil and plastics out of the ground, and they get passed on to the secondary sector, and they will turn that into a product, such as making a car manufacture. You can take wood from the primary sector, and that could be turned into a table. So table and chair, furniture manufacture would be in the secondary sector. Anything with manufacture after the name, boat manufacture, aeroplane manufacture, carpet manufacture, anything like that would be in the secondary sector. Once we've manufactured those products, they then get passed on to the tertiary sector, and the tertiary sector is responsible for selling them and providing a service and selling things to us, the consumer. So businesses that would be in the tertiary sector would be things like supermarkets, banks, hairdressers, bowling alleys, okay, shopping malls, anything that is providing a service, any retailer, furniture retailer, for example, anything where you put retailer after it, where it's a shop, would be in the tertiary sector, okay? And everything gets passed from the primary to the secondary to the tertiary. This is what we call the chain of production. I want you to remember the chain of production, guys, because in a few lessons' time we're going to be looking at integration, and it's really important when we look at integration that you understand what the chain of production is. And the chain of production is when things go from the primary to the secondary to the tertiary in that direction, okay? One last thing before we move on. Whenever, if in the exam you get asked to identify 2 businesses in the primary sector, for example, you wouldn't give company names. Please do not use company names, such as Rasgas, British Petroleum, BP, Shell Petroleum, okay? If you get asked 2 businesses in the tertiary sector, Carrefour, Lulu's, please do not give company names. You will not get the marks if you give company names. So if you get asked for the tertiary sector, you wouldn't say Carrefour, you would say supermarket. If it says bank, you wouldn't say Barclays or Qatar National Bank, okay? You would say bank, okay? You do not give company names. Primary sector, you would say an oil company, an oil mine, okay? You would not give a company name, so please bear that in mind. Okay, you need to be aware of what's happening to each of the sectors and what's happened to them over time. And remember, you're doing British curriculum here, so don't apply that to any particular country. Do not apply that to Qatar, okay? We are doing British curriculum, and you need to be aware of what is happening in the UK. Forget what's happening in other countries, only in the UK. And in the UK, the employment, so in the UK, as you can see from here, from 1998 to 2008, this trend is continuing. The number of people working in the primary sector has decreased. The number of people working in the secondary sector has decreased. And in the tertiary sector, the number of people working in the tertiary sector has increased. Okay? By output, this is the amount of stuff that has been made and generated and produced in that sector. Again, in the primary sector, less things have been produced. Secondary sector, less things, again, are being produced. We're manufacturing less in the UK. Okay? and the tertiary sector, we are producing more in the tertiary sector. For example, we are getting less raw materials out of the ground in the UK, like coal, like iron, okay? So the output in the primary sector has decreased. In the secondary sector, we're manufacturing less things in the UK overall, okay? Such as we're making less boats, less cars, okay, less furniture, yeah, in the secondary sector. So this is, the output of this sector has decreased. The tertiary sector has increased, so we're producing more in this sector. Things in the tertiary sector, things like banking services, accountancy services, IT services, okay, financial services. We are producing more of these things in the tertiary sector, okay? Now, you need to be aware of the reasons why this has happened. Now, the reasons why the primary sector has decreased, a lot of what we get now, rather than getting it out of the grounds, well, first of all, there's less stuff in the ground in the UK because they are renewable resources. We have less of it. So we're starting to run out of these things. Gas, oil, yeah, we have less of it. The other reasons, and this is the big one that I really want to draw your attention to, is that we're importing things from abroad now. So rather than getting coal out of the grounds in England, we're now importing it from China. Now you might think, why are you getting it all the way from China, which is on the other side of the world, than just taking it out of the ground in the UK? The reason why it's cheaper to get things from developing or poorer countries like China or Africa is because the labour, okay, the labour is so much cheaper in those countries. So it's actually cheaper to get coal from abroad and bring it into the UK than it is to get it out of the ground in the UK. All of the mines, all of the coal mines are no longer in existence in the UK. They've all closed down. My dad used to be a coal miner, not anymore, okay? So less people, less output from the primary sector, okay, because we're getting these things from abroad. The secondary sector is pretty similar again. So the secondary sector, again, we're importing goods from places like China, India, because it's, again, much cheaper to get those from those countries. If you think about anything that you're wearing, nearly everything that you're wearing, what does it say on the label in the back or in the side? Made in China. Now the reason it's made in China, again, because we have cheap labour in those countries. It's cheaper to import it, to bring it from other countries than it is to make it in the UK itself, okay, because we have cheap labour. If you get asked about why there's less people working in these sectors, it's because there's fewer jobs, because of automation. That word you'll come across many, many times in business studies. Automation just means machines. Workers are being replaced by machines, okay? Machines are more efficient, they're faster, so we have less people working in these sectors. But this is the real big one, guys, that most of the stuff now is coming from abroad. It's being brought into England from other countries like China because they have cheap labour there. The tertiary sector is getting bigger. Now, why is the tertiary sector getting bigger? Well, as the country gets richer, when you go from being a developing country to a developed country, as the country gets richer, people have money, and if you have money, what are you going to do with it? Well, you're going to spend that money in shops. Which sector are shops in? Tertiary sector. So we have things like more banks because we have more money. So we have more banks, we have more shops, we have more restaurants, more bowling alleys, more leisure facilities. These are all in the tertiary sector. So as the country gets richer, people want to do more shopping, they want to spend more money in restaurants, so more people are employed, more output from the tertiary sector. Also, as people become more educated, as we become smarter and more educated, people want to start working in financial services, in banking, in these types of sectors, rather than being a fisherman or a farmer, okay? In poor countries, developing countries, people tend to be farmers and fishermen. Well, not in richer countries. In richer countries, people want to work in financial services, accountancy, banking, so we have more educated people now working in the tertiary sector.